Hi, it's day two of election results at the IEC Results Center here at Century City, the Western Cape one. I'm here with Prof. Muhammad Haron. He's a premier candidate of Al Jama'h. Prof, it's your first time that you're a candidate?
Very much. The
First time?
first time in politics.
In first time in politics? You've been an academic all your life?
Yeah.
Um, what? How do you feel?
Well, generally, it's very interesting just to see how politics pan out. Of course, being in the landscape for the first time, participating, and also being selected by the party as premier candidate. I think these are all new experiences, but also very interesting for three reasons. One, being a first-time participant, also you basically see the internal politics as well as the external politics playing itself out in different ways. And even though one had come from an academic background, now that you're in it, you observe it, so to speak, from outside in, and also, in a sense, trying to make sense of the number game as it is at the present. The second part of that is that because we are growing party, we are not big, so we are challenged by several other smaller parties in the field, but also others that have been created that help to basically stem our own progress and extend the tentacles. So we are also challenged by those. Third is basically that we realize that we have a national footprint. We have individuals in almost all the provinces, except perhaps in Mpumalanga or Northern Cape. And so in a sense we are challenged, but also very spread across the sort of country. We don't have the numbers, the resources, and so we are challenged by sort of those as such. But I think overall very interesting, and I think from what we could see from the election side, there has been a degree of fairness, I say with sort of inverted commas, partly because we have had lots of stories coming out now where, for example, we noted on election day there were glitches of sorts. The equipment weren't working, and we asked ourselves now, why shouldn't the equipment be working? Shouldn't they have had backups there? We saw this in Athlone, Thornton Road Primary School, where they had one sort of voter station equipment, so the iPad, it didn't work, but further up at where Ewart used to be, the Cape Town College, they had three, and they were quite fine. So in other words, the people at the other voting station, the Thornton Road, were short-changed. And these are, of course, this is just one example. There are many others, and these are issues that should have been addressed.
Okay. What was your result provincially and nationally?
Well, in fact, I just
So
looked
far?
at a national level, we've just gone over the 28,000 mark, which is basically almost moving toward 29. The regional and provincial basically also just moved across the 22,000 mark. What that basically implies that we already have a foot in with one representative, at least at both levels, MPR as well as MP level. We would like to have had an extended sort of, more feet, so to speak. But it seems that might we just watching the numbers growing. But it appears that the provincial or regional one is already at 86% counting, which means that we might not get there. And of course, for national, it's about 70 now.
Okay. So what do you think? What resonated with voters, and or what did not resonate with voters? Seeing that you obviously wanted more.
Of course.
So what do you think? What didn't resonate with them?
Okay, there are sort of a number of issues here. And
Maybe
one
make
can
it
point
about
out-
2 or 3.
Yeah, let me just say the KZN, for example, where we have a footprint. We have had the entrance of MK indeed dented sort of everybody's expectations. In other words, we expected many more feet, but then people in the rural areas and elsewhere where we had a footprint, they automatically had to rethink whether Al Jama'h would really deliver, or whether they should go with MK, because MK are former ANC members or other from other parties, and they might just deliver what they have desired. So I think that is one. When we come to, say, Gauteng or the Western Cape, where we have a deeper footprint, so to speak, we're also challenged by the other parties, like I mentioned earlier on. There were other parties that were created, like the Alliance Movement for Change, which was, we came from a different home and now transforming into a party that's supposed to represent Muslims specifically, and others, of course, an open party. But the point of the matter is, as a result of their entrance, and with Imam Sheikh having shifted from NFP to this party to lead it, meant that they challenged Al Jama'h specifically in this area. So these are maybe just examples of where we have been and are challenged. But despite that, I think we feel that we have managed to extend our tentacles.
So can I just follow up around the small party thing? So do you have a sense that maybe you guys would have done better if smaller parties with similar outlook maybe worked together and contested the elections under one umbrella and so on, and would have given the bigger parties a run for their money?
Well, I think yes. I think if we had really been on the same sheet, or singing more or less. Of course, we know we are different. We come from different backgrounds, but if we had sang the same song pertaining to this election, it could have done so. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So we basically face on a lived experiences. The reality is that we are not on that road together with others. We are running on our own, with lack of resources, with and financial as well as material, is a major challenge, I think, for any small party.
Yes. So do you think that in the future that is something that smaller parties need to seriously talk about and consider well ahead of an election?
Well, I think, in fact, I was thinking about this myself. I said, if only we had worked on this a year ago or a year and a half, in other words, give us enough time to feel one another, so to speak. In other words, to find out what are your thoughts, what are your ideological pinnings, and how do we work together. Though we come from, like, for example, we brought on board the Comrade Moloto's group from the Pan-Africanist Congress, but because of lack of resources and so they made inroads, but not sufficient really to say, well, they made a sort of an important contribution. The same with the Nation of Jesus that Honorable Khanif had sort of brought on board. I looked at the results in Limpopo as well as in Mpumalanga and elsewhere. It really
negligible.
Very negligible, and this means that we have to rethink.
So what do you think about, also when I look at the numbers, I see some got a few hundred, some got like just over 1,000 or 2,000 votes. Do you think that there should be a threshold for parties to contest elections at provincial or national level, so that there is not all of this proliferation and people really, because the voters have indicated that they don't really want that we to cut down on the number of parties. What's your thoughts about that?
Quickly, just on the threshold, yes, I agree. I think we have just too many, and you should be there not to confuse people, but to cause people to just think whether party A, B, C, D. In other words, if there are 10 or 12 more reasonable numbers, then they can choose from that. Now you put on 30, 40. What do you expect the people who basically are introduced into politics, who know that a vote is critical, but being confused now, it's splitting the vote. And splitting the vote means that you're splitting the community. Splitting the community means that you are not on the same page, and other people won't be able to see whether party A or B will really deliver, because they don't know that. And more so, new parties have come on board with little experience, no experience. You find parties have been taken over by business persons who have no knowledge about the political landscape. All of a sudden, they want to lead. And when you look at those, you look at the numbers are negligible. So they haven't made it then. They wasted a lot of money, and that money could have gone into parties that were already on the road and to help them forward.
Okay. Can I ask you, is probably the last question, and firstly, I need to congratulate you. I think you're going to go into Parliament, into provincial legislature. I think you guys got enough votes to do that, and I'll be keen to see the kind of impact you're going to make, and I think your wisdom would be useful over there. So well done. So can I ask you this question? And I think you could be the right person to maybe give a sense of it. There's a lot of people that is upset. They calling Muslim people from the Muslim community in the Western Cape sellouts and voting for the DA in spite of the Palestinian issue and all of that stuff. What is your take on it? And then I'll tell you a bit what is my take on it. What is your response to, how do you explain that phenomenon?
Yeah, no.
If it is a phenomenon.
Well, it is a phenomenon in the Muslim community because the community has been around for 3+ centuries, and for it to have evolved and to have had some understanding, and more so individuals who represent the community to sacrifice in apartheid against the apartheid system. I mean, those names should still be circulating just to inspire them, to basically force them to think about the sacrifice that were made and where they want to go to, as such in this new dispensation. Of course, 30 years down the line also means people have had a chance to think about these things, but what comes to mind is whether they really seriously thought about this. And this afternoon, by the way, of course, it's Friday, so there was a sermon made by a young Maulana by the name of Mr. Wasim Hendricks, and he was vehemently affected by the number of Muslims who have gone along the DA line. And as a result, he basically raised serious questions. He said, why should we basically be voting for delivery? The DA talks about delivery, but are we more concerned about our own personal comfort than those poor communities that are being affected? Of course, we already identified with the Palestinian cause, with against genocide, but look at home. There's no real delivery in certain areas. So we need to be mindful of those people. So we voted for a party that talks about delivery but really does not really deliver. So there are these issues. And in a sense, when he was speaking, I mean, he's a young man finding his way into society, leading a particular community. And I thought, I mean, at least he basically highlighted issues that we all could identify with. That when people went to vote, and of course they casted the ballot, they did it in such a way that they want to eat the pie, or the bread, or have it buttered on both sides. So basically they would have, eat it one side, but say, okay, I'd rather go because they deliver. And so there has been an ambivalence within the society. Of course, there were a few who would basically jump. In other words, they didn't go to the DA, but their dilemma was, do they go for the ANC, which is corrupt? And that in itself has put them in another scenario. And of course, they're not too comfortable maybe with Jama'h because they know Jama'h is a predominantly Muslim party, but of course, even though it's a political home for all, but they were not certain whether they should go that route. But from the statistics that we've seen, it seems that some of them have thrown their weight behind Jama'h. But like we said earlier on, other two parties, one party was established purely to take away this, and they've basically challenged us because I see on the board they sort of reached about 13,000, which indeed is a fair number for a party that basically just was created
just for purpose.
For this purpose.
Good. Can I tell you what my take is? I got a sense that because the Palestinian question and Israel is a national issue and foreign affairs.
Correct.
And that's a responsibility of national government. So my sense would be, nationally, some Muslims would have voted in that direction. Could have been ANC or whatever, not the DA or something.
Correct,
nationally.
There was an outlet for
that. And then provincially, they would have voted for the DA precisely because of their lived experiences.
Correct.
Because they see that the DA is what do they say? They're a party that works for all. That works. A party that works, and the people don't want to see what's happening in the rest of South Africa, here in the Western Cape, and people in so-called middle-class communities, the Muslim communities, and so on, probably voted for that. But I think that would be an interesting thing that we need to spend some time on that and understand that, because the one thing that I'm clear about, Muhammad, is I don't think a voter is stupid.
No, not
I think the voter is not stupid.
no.
They can see through the political parties, and at the end of the day, they are voting for what is best for themselves and their families and their children and grandchildren. So I wouldn't be too hard on the Muslim community. I think one needs to unpack that further, and I think you are probably one of the people in a good position. We need to do some self-reflection around that, because at the end of the day, as people are saying, this is election around what's going on in South Africa.
Right.
So, is there anything else you want to say?
Well, I just want to touch with what you just said a moment ago. Yes, whatever is happening now, today, is going to have a snowballing effect on the generation to come. And so, in the light of that, I think, and I agree with you fully, that none of the voters have gone old, young. They have thinking caps on.
Yes.
And the thinking caps, of course, they might have been confused here and there, might have had a split vote in here and there, so they go for national for party A, they go for regional party B, and maybe at a provision, maybe another party that they think can. So in other words, they feel maybe but in the end, they apply their minds,
Yes.
and they, in the end, are responsible for their decision.
Yeah.
But as you indicated, yes, it is maybe we need to be careful in terms of being judgmental.
Yes.
And I think let's
Yeah.
rethink. Of course, we will see what happens as the year goes by, because now whoever comes in will be ruling, will be sort of doing the sort of necessary, but we need to then become an important opposition if legislation or laws that do not sit well with us, we need to speak out.
Yeah.
In other words, we use our voice in a post-election phase.
And be an effective opposition and all work together.
And that is what is necessary for our people, for our communities.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
All the best.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Right.